I'm Arlene Lemus, and this is Disrupting the Dominoes, the podcast for paid prevention, proactive anti-violence education, a consulting firm that aims to stop the dominoes from falling when it comes to violence in the workplace. And then we hope that by stopping it in the workplace, it also stops at home and in the community and in society on a whole. So we've had some really cool guests on Disrupting the Dominoes, our podcast. And if you're interested, please subscribe so you can keep up with us. But today we have someone really, really cool on so many fronts, so many areas, just a very fascinating human being and friend of mine. I'll just give you a little bit of his bio because we could take up our whole hour with the things he's accomplished. He's Chicago Dining Award winner for Restaurateur of the Year. He's worked with the top-notch industry professionals in the hospitality sector. Let Us Entertain You, the Morton Group, Sushi Samba Group. His sushi restaurant was considered one of the top 5 sushi restaurants in America. And several of his restaurants have been recognized as being in the top 20 restaurants in America. In my opinion, you are Chicago restaurateur royalty, Jason. My friend for, nearly 40 years now. So I will say that it'll date us, Jason. But Jason Chan, welcome to our podcast. And I'm just really excited about having a conversation with you. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm sincerely humbled and honored. Thank you.
Oh, it's very cool to have you. First of all, I just want to say, how are you feeling? I know that you had a little bit of a health hiccup the last time when we were going to go live with this podcast. Are you feeling okay? How are you doing?
I feel great. And thanks for being so gracious and extending this offer to be continued to me. It's widely known I had a health issue with my throat and something recurred, but it was minor and I'm all in the clear and everything's great.
Great. That's super to hear.
My sexy telephone voice back.
Yes, it's great. It's great. Well, that's great to hear, Jason. If anyone follows Jason on social media, you'll see him doing fantastic, some crazy health and fitness things that he does. He is, I have to say, one of the things that has inspired me about you, Jason, is how you embraced life after your cancer scare and how really, it inspires me. Every time I see you, it's an inspiration. When I see you post your training videos or when I just see you posting a picture of like living life to the fullest, I'm just like, man, that's how you do it. That's how this guy does it. So you're inspiring on so many levels.
Well, oftentimes we live in an age where we have the accessibility of the internet, and every day, besides meditating and centering myself, I literally go on the internet and I try to find something inspiring to lock onto to inspire me for the day. And in turn, I try to pay that forward because I think when you're given a second chance at anything, but certainly at life, to always send out the message or emit the energy that you're just live a grateful life at a second chance at life, which, I'm not saying that a lot of us take for granted, but you very oftentimes not are always introspective on the level that I am. And because I was given this second chance at life, and like a cat, maybe 9 or 10 times, yes. I just live a really, really grateful and privileged life. And I think that the real warrior or a real man, the best amount of courage that they can show is to just wear their heart on the outside at all times. Well,
you do that. You do that. So back about a year ago, man, you might not even remember, but I reached out to you and I said, hey, I'm taking the helm of this new startup, Paid Prevention, and our goal is to take a chunk out of violence in the workplace and create safer workplaces. in turn, healthier workplaces, more engaged, more productive workplaces, because violence is impacting that. And you were like, oh boy, man, does that influence, does that happen in the restaurant world and in the hospitality world? And we talked about it for a while. Like, yeah, sounds really cool. So that's why, especially I want you back, because I know that I want you on the podcast is because I know that you've experienced firsthand. So if you could please share with me in your experiences within the hospitality sector, the restaurant sector, any examples where violence, and when I say violence, from microaggression to full-blown physical event, is hindering what's happening in that restaurant or in that hotel?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, I think the reality of the world we live in currently has brought us to a place where almost any business can be subject to violence, especially in Chicago, but as in most parts of the United States, there has been an uptick in violence, and there's so many variables and reasons why, but particularly for the restaurant and hospitality space, there's groups of people, B, there's alcohol involved, and 3, it's usually the hour. People are out at night, usually beveraging and eating and drinking and in a recreational sort of space. So that leaves an environment where everybody has kind of their guard down. Everybody's enjoying themselves, but it makes a target-rich environment. So some of the things that I've seen, go from one end of the spectrum to the other. In terms of microaggression, yeah, it's very passive, but it's a constant, steady stream of microaggression, and it happens between employees dealing with one another, but more often than not, guests interacting or interacting with employees. And what I mean by that is the classic bar in Chicago or the classic nightclub in Chicago. There's always a lot of microaggression because there's a lot of males in groups that go out with one another. There's oftentimes a lot of female employees, and you put yourself in situations where it is a nightclub or it is a bar per se. Predominantly, most of the staff is female, and they are passively preyed upon. It can be remarks, it can be looks, it can be quote unquote locker room talk. Is it violent? It's not outwardly violent, but it is aggressive. It is something that, if unchecked and no one around, or there weren't any surveillance cameras or other people around, the fact that groups of men, when they get together, don't always often exhibit the best behavior. And so I've noticed that a lot, me in nightclubs and bars and working, I've run security in the late 80s and early 90s. If there was a bar or nightclub in Chicago, a lot of people hired me to run their security staff. And so to just give you examples, alcohol plays a big role in violence. It often lowers inhibitions, bad decisions and bad behavior is exhibited. And a lot of times there's the first thing is just fights. There's always a fight in a place that serves alcohol late night. It's inevitable. You can do things to mitigate and prevent it, like have a security staff that's visible, have surveillance cameras, but it's something that is inevitable that happens in that business. In the actual restaurant business, it's the same thing. You're serving alcohol. When you put people in a confined space, i.e. the bar of a restaurant, usually that's where violence takes place, because you have people close together and invading each other's personal space. And that's something that also kind of incites that opportunity for either violence or basically, now it's so funny because we're all socially distanced, but now that all the mandates have been lifted, now everybody's thriving back to that hive mentality and up against each other. And now there's even more of a conscious awareness of, hey, you're in my personal space. So I actually believe you're going to see an uptick in that in the upcoming months, especially in the summer months, of Chicago, because we've all been cooped up for 2 years because of COVID, but we're also an indoor culture. So when given the opportunity to go out and, be in public, I think there's going to be a higher sensitivity level. And that's always what it's about. Aside from that, restaurants always seem to be also a place where the petty criminal kind of finds as a target rich area,
Yep.
i.e. pickpockets, grabbing purses, literally making it a lot more easy for them to enter a space and commit petty crime. And consequently, also, what we always see in River North and in the Gold Coast area is that after the fact, after someone's dined or beveraged or drank in a bar or restaurant, on their way to the car, they're oftentimes mugged or attacked because they're easy prey because they've consumed alcohol and they're not aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, I mean, so you've touched on a lot. You've touched on, violence in the workplace that's client to employee. You've touched on employee to employee or supervisor to employee or vice versa, and things that happen outside of the business. And you also mentioned that not only the hospitality sector is dealing with violence in the workplace, and I will absolutely agree with you. I think that every place, workplace violence is happening in every restaurant, in every office on some level, and it's impacting the productivity. It's also contributing to high turnover where people are losing, productive, awesome employees because something is happening that's not being addressed. And do you feel that, in your opinion, do you feel when you highlighted that, there are women working in restaurants and so you touched upon more of a gender-based violence scenario, which of course we know that's happening. We understand that's happening. Do you feel that you're losing high quality employees because of it?
I don't know if we're necessarily losing. It's more about a combination of things. Attracting a particular type of employee that doesn't exist in the same volume that it used to, but more importantly, retention.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that although the political correctness of the workspace has improved a lot for all places of employment, especially in the restaurant, there's things that are not tolerated that were, I don't want to say tolerated before, but maybe brushed under the rug because they weren't brought to the forefront in society, and now such a prevalent and relevant topic. But I'll give you an example. The most common example that I can relate to in almost 38 years I've been in this business is the microaggression or the violent behavior that was prominent everywhere in a lot of kitchens 35 years ago when I was apprenticing to be a chef. It was almost militaristic. Matter of fact, it was based on the brigade system of the military, whereas the chef was the general, all the cooks were the privates. There was only one answer, and that was yes, chef. The chef was never wrong. Even if he was wrong, he was right. It was male dominated, and you were specifically, it was like a hazing. It was almost like being in a sorority or fraternity. It was an apprenticeship. So you're meant to be broken down mentally and physically, working long hours, 12 to 16 hours. They put you under specific stress tests to make you make mistakes and break routine that you were taught. So it was kind of like this environment that was very toxic, not very healthy. I cried before work as a young chef, making $3.10 an hour and working 12 to 16 hours a day, and then constantly being screamed at and yelled at. And yes, it was meant to show you that, you have a huge responsibility of making something you were always constantly trained to be perfect, but they would settle for excellent. So working in that environment under such amount of stress really prepared you for the nights when there was 500 people in the dining room and you had to make the same thing over and over and could not make a mistake. It had to be consistent. You had to do it fastidiously. You had to do it by the recipe. You had to do it by the chef's, priorities, how he wanted it made. So it kind of prepared you for a later, bigger stress that seemed far more diminutive than the way the chef was treating you. But that bred a whole culture and a whole behavior pattern that permeates the business now, because literally now it's a different game. And we talk about old school, the way you and I trained in martial arts 30, 40 years ago, certainly is not the same way they train in modern dojos, schools, and gyms now.
That's the correlation. That's the example that I was going to use.
Well, most people don't realize how close martial arts and running a high-end fine dining progressive kitchen is, or contemporary kitchen. The teacher or the sifu or the sensei is a master. The dojo is a place of knowledge and respect and teaching. That's a kitchen. The chef is the sensei or the sifu or the master. All of subordinates, they're all wearing white, just like a gi or uniform. And in all martial arts, there's some sort of respect acknowledgement when the teacher talks to you, whether it's us or a bow. And the same in the kitchen, chef says, I want this is why I want it. And you say, yes, chef. And it's all based on the same. You're in a dojo, you're in a space that's about respect and learning and knowledge. And there's a hierarchy, and you have to start out learning the basics. You're a white belt or a white sash or whatever it is. And that's how you go up. So I digress. To get back on the subject of violence in the kitchen, you, just like in a dojo or just like in a gym, you're taught the basics and you're taught to be desensitized to being punched and kicked and sparring and all these things, because you know that it's that oxymoron, that dichotomy where we teach you how to fight so you don't have to. We treat you poorly and put you under high stress, because then you don't have to be when there is high stress and people screaming at you because they need the food in 5 minutes because there's 20 people at a table waiting for it. So outside of that, the real violence that I've seen, because that is emotional violence, but the real physical violence I've seen is in particular places that are beverage based, that concentrate on alcohol as their main source of sales. And that has opened the door for employees that have too much to drink and make bad decisions while they're in the workspace, or customers that have been drinking alcohol and get sexually aggressive or violent, or just make bad decisions when dealing with female in particular. But it goes both ways. I'm not being gender specific. I've seen some drunk ladies literally get way more violent than men ever could. Men exhibit horrible decisions and bad behavior verbally, whereas I've seen a lot of women in the 30 years I've done this where they consume too much alcohol and they literally take off their shoe and try to hit you with it, or grab you, or slap you. Slapping is a good thing.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll step in for a second.
Yes.
So, my son is a chef, and I have seen on numerous occasions where, he wants so much to be where the person that's mentoring him is, that there is sometimes an unhealthy power dynamic, much like master to student in martial arts, much like coach to athlete in high level, elite level sports, where that person holds all the keys. All the keys to the castle are held by that person. I'm just very happy that my son knows, how to identify coercion that's inappropriate, how to set a boundary, and, only be pushed so far before he says, wait a minute, can we have a talk about this? Because, I've come in the last 22 days in a row when you called me, and I need a day off, which is, very common in your industry. So I appreciate the side by side from martial arts to the kitchen that you've presented, because whenever there is a power dynamic, there is always the chance that inappropriate coercion or things like that may happen. So the skill set of setting a boundary, using your voice, so those are all really important. I'll also add that, there is still a group of us in the martial arts world that believes that, man, old schooled way, was somehow a badge of honor. And for me personally, I have some personal growth that I'm proud of, that I survived those things. But then I think about how many of my peers, because I started when I was 5. So how many of my peers at 8 years old, at 9 years old, at 12 years old, just disappeared because that old school way wasn't a good path for them to become all they could be in martial arts. I may even say I was lucky that I survived it, because it was pretty crazy training at that time. So how much did we miss out? Which again leads me to what I say about violence. How much are we missing out on because people are having to experience violence on a daily basis or a monthly basis, or seeing it in their community? And that's a question I think as a society, as a boss, as a leader, we need to ask, what are we willing? What is it okay to just say, well, Chef Jason, you're a young chef. You want to be that guy. You just got to put up with this. Nurses say, well, it's just part of the job.
Sure.
Bartenders are saying, well, someone's going to make some off-cuff remark to me. It's just part of the job. When does it stop being just part of the job?
Well, there's no difference between an excuse or a reason, but I'm going to try to my best ability to explain based on my experience. First of all, I think particularly in men, and I'm not, again, being gender specific, but because in my world, it was a male dominated industry, and now that has changed over the last 10, 15 years, and especially in Chicago, all bad behavior comes from insecurity. And when you're put into a role as a mentor, as a teacher, or you've achieved your title and role in life as a chef, which is leading a bunch of young minds hungry to learn and be taught the proper way to do things in a modern day kitchen. It's human nature to have a little of insecurity, just like you and I being martial arts teachers, we're really the best teachers because we're just focusing on the basics, which is exactly what a chef does. Because they were held to task to such a high regard and standard, coming from an old school place, it was all about the basics. And that's when they were the hardest on you. So when I was learning I wanted to be a French chef. I worked at L'Escargot on Michigan Avenue in the Allerton Hotel for 3 years. And he was the hardest on me on the basic skills, peeling a potato, how to cut and julienne things, how to make stock, how to make the most basic sauce with butter and eggs and herbs. And just like in martial arts, the basics are what you master, so that years later, when you become an expert or a teacher or a sensei or a sifu, really what you're executing is teaching those basics. And unless the person that is teaching you has the ability to realize, like, what is a teacher really about? A teacher and a mentor is, I must make this student better than me. They have to jump over me. If I don't achieve that, then I failed as a teacher and a mentor, because the person I'm teaching should be the better version of myself. I've taken everything I've learned from all my teachers and made my own style. And then with all my dozens of students that I'd had over the years, I try to make them not only a better version of myself, but a better version of everybody that's taught me, and encapsulated and Frankenstein that into one concept of training. So in the kitchen, a lot of times with chefs, you have to understand there's three sides to every story, and no one's ever really right or wrong. Bad things happen, horrible things happen. I'm not negating or minimizing that. But what I'm saying is that you look at the life of a chef, it took a lot of mental and physical fortitude to get to that, to achieve that role. And then at that role, you have to understand that now post-COVID, it's different than pre-COVID, but this is the reason why we have so many deficiencies in staffing right now. But pre-COVID, you work, you have a family and you're a chef, or you're single, but most oftentimes you have a girlfriend, a spouse, or children, or a family. You cannot ever see them on holidays. You work 14, 15 hours a day. You only get 1, maybe 2 days off. When you get off work, it's midnight, 11 till 1 in the morning, and you don't have a lot of healthy options. You want to eat something, smoke something, drink something before you go home. And there aren't a lot of healthy options at midnight. So
Right.
you're going to drink alcohol, you're going to eat fattening food, which leads you to a horrible physical state. Or you smoke or snort or do something at the end of the day so that you can wind down, go home, go to sleep at 2 in the morning, then wake up at 9 o'clock, not see your family. Everything you're doing is nurturing strangers and other people, your coworkers, guests, everyone. This leaves you in a very weird emotional space where you're constantly doing things for others. A lot of times, most of them are 300-400 strangers a day that you don't even know. And then there's your boss. Then so that leaves very little for yourself to give back to yourself or to your family. And then the 2 days that you have off from a restaurant job, the last thing you want to do is deal with problems.
Right.
I.e.
Right.
issues with your wife, your spouse, your kids. So with that being said, pile on the pressures of not being around a family, pile on the pressures of work, and as a chef or as any position in the restaurant, not only do you have to do the front of the house, you have to do all the executive functioning and the administration functioning in the back of the house.
Yep.
So you're wearing 4 hats. So I guess what I'm getting to is that you're a live wire.
Right.
I've seen the most classic example, modern day. In the last 5 years, the most prevalent things in Chicago news have been chefs that have physically and violently attacked their subordinates, whether it was choking them or grabbing them and spitting in their face. I mean, it's been in the news. There's 3 or 4 Chicago chefs with big restaurant groups that were canceled. One chef in particular, there's a new documentary on Prime Video about him. He violently attacked his wife and was charged with domestic battery and violence, and then tried to open another restaurant. Nobody went. Then he had to move, and now he's trying to make a comeback.
I think what you're talking about is touching upon. First of all, I want to just scoot back to what you were saying about the basics as a martial artist and the basics as a chef, right? To me, that's the foundation of how you create a good environment, how you create a good culture. How do you keep everyone around you engaged? That's what it is. I mean, I don't. I used to tell my athletes all the time, look, the bottom line is your mom and dad don't have you training with me really because I won some Olympic medal. They have you training with me because I represent good things. I carry myself in a certain way. I live a certain way. So it's creating that culture that I think that's how I see what you're describing as an environment of strong basics, connectivity. That's how I see that. And I think it's really important. I know that PAVE, as part of their workplace violence prevention plan, we bring all stakeholders to the table. So let's discuss this. Let's talk about, let's address the elephant in the room. Violence is occurring in our workplace. How can we change it? And I think you are the type of leader that does things like that. You are the type of leader that keeps people engaged, that keeps them moving forward in a positive way. And to me, that's part of the answer. Something else you touched on and I think it's really important, is self-care. I know that it's really important to you. I know that you take care of yourself. You find ways to ground yourself through martial arts, through your physical fitness, through your giving, your personal giving of yourself to people. I think that is a big portion of your self-care. But when we're presenting programming to businesses or hospitality groups, as part of those human safety skills or basics, right? How to set a boundary, how to use your voice. We also bring in a lot of self-care, how to ground, how to breathe. I know as a martial artist, I'm always amazed, and I'm sure you feel this way too, how many people don't know how to breathe. It's such a vital thing to our life every second that we're alive, but people don't know how to breathe. But okay, so I'm gonna reach out to a different part of your life now.
Sure.
I think part of changing culture is having supportive people around you. So to make the culture in the workplace okay, to be a good bystander, to teach people how to be a good bystander, to have the confidence and the skill set to intervene when they see something, whether that be someone say some off-cuff comment that they didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but it is offensive, to have someone step in and say, whoa, man, that wasn't cool. Okay, which I know you probably do on a daily basis. I know, okay? But there are very particular cases where you have stepped in to be a bystander, and you have protected people out on the street. You've seen a crime in progress and you've run over there and helped stop it. Now, we don't want everybody to feel that they have to be Superman or Superwoman, but what do you feel gives you that confidence that you can be a good bystander or upstander? What's important?
Well, this is my forte. And this question that you asked me, this is where I thrive, because it also connects with the last topic that we spoke of when it actually pertains to chefs. And that is LinkedIn and Fortune 500 companies call it soft skills. And when you're a young chef, whether it was old school or recently, those soft skills are actually pounded out of you, because they want you to have this thick skin to be prepared for all this stress you're going to have, and to have thick skin so that you'll be able to handle all the stresses of a busy restaurant and kitchen. And that's what's missing. And that's why, if you ask me, like I said, I go back, why do certain chefs that have had violent episodes? It's because they're egomaniacs with low self-esteem at the same time. And that's because the soft skills in them have been pounded out at a very early age, or in the formative years of them becoming a chef. And that's why, for me, anger is really just frustrated love in every situation, but especially in my own life. I realized anytime I was really truly angry is because I had a lot of love. And I was very frustrated, because there's a fine line between love and hate, love and anger. And a lot of times it's purely out of insecurity and frustration. And so for me, one of the things that I've really tried to champion and really tried to preach and live by are these soft skills. And the soft skills are being empathetic, having emotional intelligence or emotional content. And that is a human thing that can't be taught. I shied away from it for many reasons, because as a North American male, you're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to be weak. You're not supposed to look stupid or foolish or like you don't know what you're doing. So as a young man, and also being first generation, I didn't want to be different, and I wanted to fit in. And there was all this machismo that was piled on top of me as well. And you have to play with G.I. Joe dolls, and you got to be tough. And, I never really learned martial arts to begin with. It was for a different reason. I got beat up all the time, living in a normal African-American neighborhood on the South Side, then moving to an all-white Anglo-Saxon Irish Catholic neighborhood. And then it was subjected to lots of racism. And so I digress. the thing that really,
Just let me stop you there. But that's not a digression. To me, that's a perfect example of how violence outside of the workplace, people pull it in. You can't lose that. I mean, you were impacted by it.
yeah,
I mean, you've chose to use it in a positive manner, but there are employees that are going to step in under those same circumstances that you went through and not use it as a positive manner and not be the best that they could be. Martial arts helped you use all that to become the best you can be.
absolutely. And it also honed my natural inherent soft skills of being empathetic and of I have something, I think everybody in hospitality that's really great at what they're doing also really crush other areas of their life, because everything is dealing with people. Every business is dealing with people, but especially the restaurant business, is to have that emotional content, to have that empathy, to always want to people please. If I'm a bystander and I see someone being wronged, I mean, you and I both know that the Chinese word martial arts literally means to help others that can't help themselves. And
Yep.
for me, initially, it was some socio ego driven thing. I had to learn martial arts because I kept fighting in the street, and I wanted to legitimize myself and do it the right way and not just be this street punk fighting everybody at school, and everybody tried to rob me and make fun of me because of my race. But little did I know that through all the years of physicality of learning martial arts, you're really just honing the inside, your spirit.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so now it's brought me to a place where every day I literally am trying to be a better version of myself. I'm trying to help other people. But more importantly, I'm mindful of other people. I rarely ever now react. I try, instead of being tactile, to be strategic. I learned that through martial arts, that you don't, there's times to react, but oftentimes it's about staying aware of your surroundings, thinking it through, weighing things out, being empathetic. And so that's brought me to a place where, yeah, I know when we're born, the only thing we're born with is knowing what's right and wrong. And if I see someone, especially if it's someone that's not in a place to defend themselves, that's being taken advantage of, that's being preyed upon, that's being targeted, for me as a human being, it has nothing to do with my sense of emotional content or intelligence or I just, as a human being, that strikes me personally. And I think of my parents, I think of loved ones, and would I want that to happen to them?
Right. Yeah. I mean, definitely, it's very clear that you're a very empathetic person. I think you're selling yourself a little bit short here on this bystander question. So I'll just, I mean, anybody Googles Jason Chan, you'll get, a bunch of newsreels on him stepping into diffuse criminal activity. But it takes a lot to feel comfortable doing that. And I'm sure you do that probably every day. I know I feel I use my bystander intervention training at least once a week, I'm telling you, where I see a weird situation in a parking lot and I just kind of go over there and use humor. Hey guys, or does anybody know where this store is at? Or, just to lighten but I'm very comfortable in my skin, and I'm very comfortable with threatening situations for me personally, just as you are. So if you could tell somebody the skill set that they needed to be a good bystander or feel comfortable being a good bystander, not only in martial arts terms, but almost intellectual terms, even though that word seems kind of uppity. But where do you see what has to happen for you to be a good bystander?
Well, this is one thing that really hits close to me. As you know, my teacher of 23 years is Eddie Yoshimura, who is a high-level member of the police department. And about 7 years ago, he changed the dynamic of the training for all his black belts. And he basically said, listen, you're all modern day warriors and samurais. 1,000 years ago, the samurai, his main weapon was a sword. The modern day version of that is a gun. Will I teach you to shoot if you care to? Absolutely. But the most important thing was the Bushido, the code that samurais lived by. So what he taught us and actually had us participate in were active shooter seminars and urban combat and tactical seminars. Because unfortunately, like I said earlier, we live in a day and age where as a restaurant owner or manager, you have to be prepared for anyone to walk into a public space with a gun, with a knife, with some mental health issue, high on drugs, and you've got to know what to do. And you got to teach your staff and the people around you that are under your care and looking to you for guidance. And so the main thing that we teach, when we teach martial arts, when we teach rape prevention, when we teach self-defense in urban settings, the number one thing you can do is situational awareness. So the one thing I teach all my servers, all my staff in any place and all my students is that whenever you go out, wherever you feel most comfortable is usually where you're attacked. And statistically, 75% of the time is when you walk in your home, walk out your home, and 2 blocks within that, or when you get in your car, when you get out of your car, because that's when your defenses are the most down. The 2 most personal spaces you feel safe, or when you're leaving your home or going into your home. And secondly, the number 1 target in any part of the world is female, and number 2 is elderly.
Right.
So situational awareness, there's a lot of things we teach, and I've learned it's called left of bang. Everybody has an intuition. Women call it a woman's intuition. Men don't always listen to their intuition because we're stupid, but it's that inner voice. Women know that inner voice is, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel comfortable, something's off. Men think it's a different person. That inner voice is someone else and don't always listen to it, but we have to teach ourselves to listen. Like, it's called left of bang. They teach it in the military. We teach it in our tactical combat seminars, that when you're on the street, you almost know when something's going to happen, and you've got to be prepared left of that. So when you walk out of your apartment, you have to scan everything and look at everything. You have to assess everything. You have to look, is there anything left of bang? What is that person? Who is that person? You have to see everybody, and you have to be prepared that before you turn around and lock your door, you're aware of who's around you. Then when you walk to your car, you have to be aware of who's around you before you get in your car. Last year, there was over 3,500 carjackings, and they all really happened because nobody was really aware of their situation. You're at a gas station or a stoplight, they're listening to music or on their phone. And the phone is the number 1 reason people are getting mugged and attacked publicly.
Yeah,
they're always on.
It's crazy how we lose ourselves in our handheld devices. Correct.
You're not situationally aware of anything.
One of the group of principles that the training that PAVE brings into the workplace is based on empowerment self-defense, which has the 5 fingers, what they call it. Much of what you're saying here: think, yell, run, fight, tell. Right. So if you put that kind of in more of a corporate America, right, you address your situation, situational awareness. You're thinking about what is going on. Yell. You're not going to yell at work. You might have to, but let me just talk about this. Let me share with someone what the heck is going on here. But there is your tactical approach to how we present it in corporate America or institutional America or organizations. It's very similar. It's very similar. That's how we're going to make systematic change. That's how we're going to culture change, is by taking that approach. So I know that you also experienced something that was horrific. You had some your family experience. I'm going to say it's a hate crime. It could have been random, but I'm going to say it was a hate crime, given the uptick of a crime against Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. So if you'd like to share a little bit about what happened, and then if you could also, how did that impact? We always talk about how the dominoes of violence continue to fall. So how did those dominoes continue to fall for you and your family?
It's amazing. It's almost surreal.
Your mom?
Yes. So I'll start the story off by, in the middle of July, I was working in the suburbs and I was driving out to the suburbs on I-55. And right after I got on, my parents live in the South Loop. I had dropped off on Sunday. I couldn't take them out for breakfast like I always do, or brunch on Sunday. So I brought them some pastries. And then I left their apartment and I got on at the Chinatown exit of I-55 to head out to Burr Ridge. And right after I got on the expressway, someone shot out my back window of my car. And at the time I thought, it's probably two gangbangers on the expressway shooting each other. It was a ricochet. I could have been targeted because I got on at Chinatown. I had no idea, but I wrote it off as this is the price you pay living in the city and in the times we're in right now. There's a lot of social unrest, a lot of racial unrest, a lot of things going on last year in the summer. Plus, it's the summer in Chicago. So I tried to rationalize what had happened and I thought nothing of it. Then lo and behold, a month later, in that month from July to August, there had been a lot of things in the news, a lot of items in the media about Asian American, specifically elderly Asian American women and Pacific Islanders being attacked, mostly in LA and a lot in New York. And talk about situational awareness. Like I wasn't even aware that it could happen in the Midwest. I was aware that it was happening on both coasts. And then again, this is a classic example. Like the last place you would expect to ever get attacked is right outside your front door or outside your car. I never expected in a million years that my own mother, who's 4'9", 80 pounds, 82 years old, strong, maybe strong isn't a big enough word for my mom, but she was in front of her house. Her apartment building is on the corner of Roosevelt and Michigan Avenue. And I had told them that it's not wise to go out after dark. It's not even wise really to be out and about a lot because there's so many people on the street on Michigan Avenue. A lot of them can, a percentage of them can be predatory because it is Michigan Avenue and they target people on Michigan Avenue to either rob or purse snatching, the whole 9 yards, because it's been prevalent throughout last summer. They didn't put it a lot on the news, but there's also a lot of groups of attacks, of groups of young men attacking groups of people or couples. So, not only am I always worried about my parents and worried about the state of our city, at that particular time, I told my mother, okay, well, if you're going to go for a walk, just do it in front of your building. Because I thought at the very least the doorman's right there. And on Michigan Avenue, there's hundreds of people on the street at all times. So August, 3 p.m., bright in the middle of daylight, a young man in his early 30s targeted my mom and dad. They were literally walking north on Michigan Avenue to the corner of their street. And he jumped in front of them and startled them. And then he kind of laughed. And then he grabbed a construction horse or a construction A-frame, the thing with the stripes and the blinking light on it. He grabbed it and literally hurled it at my parents. And my dad's 87, my mom's 82. They're both very, very frail, petite people. And, true to my mom's nature, my dad had a fall a month before that and had a concussion and split his head open. So my mom, protecting my dad, literally pushed my dad out of the way because it was headed right at them. The guy was only 5 feet away from him. And my mom pushed my dad out of the way and the frame hit her arm and shattered her arm. So my mom immediately had to have emergency surgery. She has a titanium plate and pins and rods and screws. She had to go through 9 months of physical therapy and her arm will never be the same. And, being an 81-year-old woman, she's victim to bone mass issues and osteoporosis. And so it was very painful and horrific, but the trauma, the psychological trauma from my parents that they're not even safe in front of their own home, right in front of their building on a busy, bright 3 p.m. in the afternoon, summer day. They couldn't just go out for fresh air. it literally put my parents in a psychological prison. They didn't want to leave
Yeah.
they're like, we can't even go outside. And it's summer out, we want fresh air. And they were confined and restricted to their, because it's a high rise, and being so susceptible to COVID, they didn't leave their apartment. I had groceries delivered to their door and they wiped everything down. I didn't want them to go through even the smallest chance that they would get COVID, because that would have been very deadly for them at their age. So then to come off of COVID and then now finally having summer and then being attacked and being racially targeted really put them in a deep psychological space that they've been here their whole lives. They love Chicago. They're Chicagoans to a heart. They've dealt with every hurdle and obstacle that being an immigrant and being elderly and being all these things and all these challenges in their life. But now I would have to say today they're in a better place. Thanks to a lot of my friends in the industry who really helped them out. Ty Dang, Curtis Duffy, a bunch of chefs, a bunch of friends of mine, all helped them out, made them meals, made them feel better. My best friend let me take his dog so my mom could play with her dog. And it was,
Right.
it takes a community, and it did. It was a community
Right.
of friends in the industry that really helped my family get over this.
Well, I mean, Jason, I'm so sorry that that happened to your mom. And I remember when it happened, I reached out to you then, but
Yes,
it just,
you did.
of course, something like that should never happen. But I think the example I'd love to use here is that what you said is all that support that your parents received after helped them work through and stop those dominoes from falling, right? They got the
Absolutely.
support they needed. It helped maybe with their feelings of anxiety, helped them feel safer. That's the intention of PAVE, to create that type of supportive atmosphere in the workplace, so that if people are bringing violent events that have happened to them outside of the work, if they're bringing that in and that's stopping them from being present, or if the anxiety is riddling them from being the best they can be, that's where the community needs to come in. That's where the work office needs to be a better atmosphere.
Yeah.
So we're almost finished up here. You have been awesome.
Thank you.
I ask, first off, I'll say, is there anything that you're doing right now that you want to share with our listeners?
I'm currently putting together a restaurant. I'm part of Parker Hospitality, and myself and a very well-known infamous chef from Greece are putting together a fine dining Mediterranean restaurant at 802 West Randolph. That's what I'm currently involved in. I've been in the restaurant business my entire life, and the last 2 years have been very, very challenging for the restaurant business. So this is kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, although people like you and I never view the light at the end of the tunnel as the kind of illusion. The tunnel is the illusion, right? But I have a feeling that with all this chaos that's been in the world, I really feel like chaos always precedes really amazing change. And that's what I think is going to happen globally and not just locally or nationally, is that there's going to be a change. The way people think, the sheer fact that we're, able to discuss this in this type of venue gives us the chance to really talk about where our world is at right now and the violence that exists and how we mitigate it, how we learn from it, and how we move forward in a different direction and doing things in a different way.
Yeah, I think we both look at this craziness that we've been through in the last 2 years, that something really super positive and awesome is going to come out of it. And we are going to hit that reset button in the way maybe we should have generations ago. So I hope we're right.
Well, I think we are. And let me just say one thing. The craziest thing about COVID, like, you have to look, there's a silver lining in everything. You have no idea how many chefs and how many restaurateurs really realize the value of work-life balance because of COVID. And now they
Hmm.
approach things differently because they realize, hey, the last 2 years, I actually got to see my kid. And I wasn't
Right.
just on this treadmill, and I'm not drinking half a bottle of bourbon every night.
Right.
And I'm taking care of myself and I'm doing other things. I had to work out because I couldn't just sit in my apartment for the whole time. So I think one of the benefits is there's been a lot of mental and emotional growth with a lot of people in the restaurant business that didn't exist before, because when you're on that treadmill, you're in that rat race, you don't realize. And then when the whole world was forced to stop, they took a moment and said, hey, this is what Jason's been doing. I only teach privately all restaurant people because I'm trying to give them a way for at least 1 hour a week or a couple hours a week. They do something productive to give back to themselves, because then now they have something to give their families and other
Right.
people. So
Yeah, balance is important. So I ask all my guests this last question, and it is because I believe you are in violence prevention as well when you do
yes,
that as an arts instructor.
yes.
So if you could have the audience of one person, someone that would sit down and listen to us and really help facilitate violence prevention, help move the movement forward. If you could talk to one person that you thought could do that, who would that person be?
To help me get that message across.
Yep, that we need to make a real effort to move the movement of violence prevention forward.
This is going to sound really crazy.
We've had some good ones, so please share it.
Well, right now, at this current time and at this current date, it would have to be Kanye West or Kim Kardashian, because it seems like the only people that are making effect socially
Right.
or whatever comes out of their talking head. And
Yeah.
so what I mean by that is, like, nothing ever happens unless someone's looking. And
Right.
we live in an age now that's so social media driven and dumpster fire media that it would almost take a Kim Kardashian or a Kanye West to come out and say something like
Yeah.
a blanket vague statement like Nancy Reagan did that said, just say no. It's got to
Right.
be someone that can ignite a campaign or a movement about stopping violence, whether it's in the workplace or domestically or in general. It would
Right.
have to take a social icon right now to kind of maybe Jay-Z, maybe Beyonce, maybe someone that everyone in the
Right.
world seems to follow on social media.
Great. All right. Well, Jason, it's been fantastic. Thank you for giving us of your time today. We wish you all the best. I hope that I see you soon at Chicago Fitness Center.
We will.
Our workout times cross, and I wish you continued success and health and happiness. And to our listeners, this has been Disrupting the Dominoes, Jason Chan, and stay safe. Thank you for listening.
I just want to say thank you very much for having me. It's been amazing, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Eileen. Have a great day.